Hello, and welcome to today's discussion. I'm Claire, and I'm joined by Alan. We'll be covering several key stories making headlines around the world.
Hi everyone, I'm Alan. We're glad to be here today to break down some of the most important news stories.
Let's start with Ukraine, where President Volodymyr Zelensky has come out against holding elections during the ongoing conflict with Russia. According to reports, Zelensky believes that elections at this time would pose a significant risk to the country's unity.
That's a pretty strong statement. Can you provide more context on why Zelensky thinks elections would be risky?
From what we've gathered, Zelensky stated that elections during a war like this are a huge risk and could potentially split Ukraine. The current martial law has suspended elections, and this decision seems to be widely supported by the population.
I see. So it's not just Zelensky's personal opinion, but also a measure that has broader support. Did his former defense minister suggest holding elections, which prompted Zelensky's response?
Exactly. The former defense minister had publicly called for wartime elections, which Zelensky then rejected. It seems there was a debate, or at least a discussion, within Ukraine's leadership about the timing and feasibility of elections during the conflict.
That's interesting, because it highlights the complexities of maintaining democratic processes during a war. How does this decision align with Ukraine's priorities right now?
Ukraine is clearly prioritizing its fight against Russian forces. The decision to forego elections during this period is seen as a way to maintain national unity and focus on the immediate threat posed by the invasion. Moving on to the United States, Pete Buttigieg has returned to South Carolina, a state that played a significant role in his previous presidential campaign. According to reports, Buttigieg is currently weighing whether to run for the White House again.
That's a notable visit, especially given the history of his last campaign. What was the context of his return to South Carolina?
The last time Buttigieg was in South Carolina, he was marking a distant finish in the state's primary, which effectively ended his campaign. This time, he's giving political speeches, indicating he's seriously considering another run.
So he's revisiting the ground he covered before. Do we know what specific issues or themes he's focusing on during these speeches?
The reporting doesn't go into great detail about the content of his speeches, but it's reasonable to assume he's discussing his vision for the country and potentially addressing lessons learned from his previous campaign.
It's always interesting to see how politicians revisit and rebrand their messages. Do you think this signals a formal announcement is imminent?
It's hard to say for certain, but his activities in South Carolina suggest he's actively exploring another campaign. We'll likely see more clarity in the coming weeks or months. Let's shift our attention to Kazakhstan, where a parliamentary election was held recently. The expectation is that this election will further consolidate President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev's power.
That's a significant development in Central Asia. Can you walk us through what's happening in Kazakhstan?
The election is seen as a step towards strengthening Tokayev's grip on power. The pro-presidential Adilet party is predicted to win overwhelmingly, which would likely give Tokayev significant control over the parliament.
So it seems like this election is more about solidifying the current leadership rather than a competitive democratic process. Are there any indications of how this might affect Kazakhstan's relations with neighboring countries or global powers?
The reporting doesn't delve deeply into the international implications, but it's worth noting that Kazakhstan is Central Asia's largest nation. Any shift in its political landscape could have regional repercussions.
That's a good point. Regional dynamics can be quite sensitive to changes in the political landscape of key countries.
Moving to the Middle East, Iran's president has defended a memorandum of understanding with the United States as the best way to exit a stalled conflict. This development is significant given the complex history between the two countries.
Can you provide more details on this memorandum and what conflict it pertains to?
The memorandum is related to a stalled war, though the specific conflict isn't detailed in the reports we've seen. Iran's president views this agreement as a viable path forward, while there's also a mention of a more forceful tone from the new head of Iran's top security body.
So there's a bit of a mixed message coming from Iran's leadership. On one hand, there's a diplomatic effort with the U.S., and on the other, there's a more aggressive rhetoric. How do you think this plays out?
It's a complex situation. The diplomatic effort suggests a willingness to engage with the U.S., while the more forceful tone indicates there are still significant tensions and potentially competing views within Iran's leadership. Finally, let's discuss a recent meeting between Jared Kushner, President Donald Trump's son-in-law and advisor, and House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries. This meeting comes as control of the House is at stake in the upcoming November elections.
That's a pretty significant meeting, given the political context. What was the nature of this meeting, and what does it signal?
According to reports, the meeting was private and took place in New York. It indicates that the White House is seeking ways to work with Democrats, potentially in the event they gain majority control in the House.
So this could be seen as a preemptive effort to build relationships or find common ground. Do we know what specific issues or areas they discussed during the meeting?
The details of their discussion aren't publicly available, but it's reasonable to assume they covered a range of topics where there's potential for bipartisan cooperation or where the White House might need to work with Democrats in the future.
As we wrap up today's discussion, it's clear there's a lot happening on the global stage. From Ukraine's decision on wartime elections to the political maneuvering in the U.S., Kazakhstan, and the Middle East, there's no shortage of significant news.
Indeed. It's been a pleasure discussing these stories with you, Alan. We hope our listeners have gained a better understanding of these complex issues.
Thanks, Claire. It's always a pleasure to explore these important topics together.
And that's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back soon with more news and analysis.